are going to begin tonight with a potential break in one of the greatest mysteries in all of American history. I'm talking about the hunt for the true identity of D.B. Cooper.
It was November 24, 1971, the day before Thanksgiving, when something extraordinary happened in the skies above Washington state. On what should have been a routine flight from Portland to Seattle, a man named D.B. Cooper pulled off a crime that would defy explanation and captivate the nation for over 5 decades. The Boeing 727, Flight 305, had just reached cruising altitude when a man, dressed in a dark suit and sunglasses, handed a note to a flight attendant. She thought it was simply a lonely passenger's phone number. She tucked it away, her shift continuing, until Cooper leaned in and whispered, "Miss, you'd better look at that note. I have a bomb." With those words, the flight attendant's world turned upside down. The note wasn't just a flirtatious gesture, it was a demand. Cooper had a bomb, and he wasn't bluffing. His note detailed the demands: $200,000 in $20 bills, 4 parachutes, and a fuel truck waiting for him on the tarmac in Seattle. If the airline didn't comply, he threatened to blow the plane sky high. To confirm his intentions, Cooper opened the briefcase just enough to reveal what looked like sticks of dynamite. The calm, composed way he presented his demands shocked the flight attendants, who kept their cool to avoid triggering an explosive reaction. As they scurried off to alert the cockpit, no one on board could have imagined the magnitude of what was unfolding. The plane's pilot, William Scott, immediately radioed air traffic control with the hijacking code, setting off alarms across the country. Within minutes, the FBI had been notified, and the wheels of law enforcement began to churn. What was thought to be a routine flight turned into a national crisis. By the time Flight 305 landed in Seattle, Cooper had everything he'd asked for: the money, the parachutes, and the fuel truck waiting for him on the tarmac in Seattle. If the airline didn't comply, he threatened to blow the plane sky high. The passengers were released unharmed, blissfully unaware they had just been part of what would become one of America's greatest unsolved mysteries. With only a skeleton crew remaining on board, Cooper ordered the plane to take off again, heading south toward Mexico. And then, somewhere over the dense forests of Washington, while rain battered the aircraft and the wind howled outside at 200 miles per hour, D.B. Cooper disappeared. At around 8 p.m., Cooper opened the rear stairs of the Boeing 727 and jumped into the night, taking with him a bag full of cash and the mystery of his identity. He vanished into the dark skies, leaving behind nothing but questions and a single clue: a clip-on tie he had left behind on his seat. The FBI, desperate to track him down, launched a massive search operation, scouring miles of forest, riverbanks, and small towns in the area. But when the dust settled, there was no sign of Cooper. No parachute, no gear, no body. Just those 3 bundles of money found by the boy. But the mystery didn't end there. Over the next few years, clues began to surface that would reignite the search. A breakthrough would come in the most unexpected way, leading investigators on a path that would ultimately change the course of the case forever. But was it enough to finally crack the case of D.B. Cooper? After D.B. Cooper's daring escape, the FBI's investigation went into full throttle, but the mystery only deepened. For years, the FBI chased every lead, followed countless tips, and investigated over 1,000 suspects. Yet with each passing year, the case grew colder, and Cooper's identity remained an enigma. The public, however, wasn't so easily deterred. The case of D.B. Cooper became a pop culture phenomenon, with conspiracy theories running wild. Was he an experienced skydiver? An ex-military man? Did he survive the jump, or was he lost to the elements, his body never found? Some believed Cooper had died in the fall, while others thought he may have gotten away, blending into society with a fortune that could change his life. The FBI, despite its massive resources, was stymied. Forensic evidence turned out to be slim. The partial DNA collected from Cooper's tie and the ransom money never led to a match. The FBI tried to track the serial numbers on the money that Cooper had taken, but it led to dead ends. Cooper's calm demeanor during the entire heist, the precision of his demands, and the daring jump into the night made him a figure of legend. Yet, with no solid evidence or a breakthrough, the case eventually grew cold. For nearly 10 years, the story of D.B. Cooper seemed to have reached its conclusion. But in 1980, something unexpected happened, something that would send shockwaves through the case and rekindle the investigation. It all started when an 8-year-old boy, camping with his family along the Columbia River in Washington state, made a discovery that would forever alter the course of the investigation. Buried in the sand, the boy found 3 bundles of $20 bills, rotted and sun-damaged, but still bound in rubber bands. It seemed like a strange coincidence at first, but as the investigation unfolded, the FBI confirmed that the serial numbers matched the bills Cooper had taken in the hijacking. This new clue reignited the investigation. Could this be the evidence that finally led to D.B. Cooper's whereabouts? It was the first and only physical clue left behind by Cooper. But did it mean Cooper died after the jump and the money washed downstream, or did he plant it there to mess with the FBI? That question would linger, fueling a renewed sense of urgency and intrigue. The FBI scrambled to search the area around the Columbia River, and divers even went into the water to search the riverbed. Still, there was no sign of Cooper. No parachute, no gear, no body. Just those 3 bundles of money found by the boy. But even after this breakthrough, there were more questions than answers. Despite the search intensifying, the pieces of the puzzle seemed to be slipping away. The FBI's efforts led to nowhere. But a new lead would soon emerge, one that would bring the investigation back into the spotlight and introduce an unexpected twist. It wasn't the FBI this time, but an ordinary man with a passion for solving the Cooper mystery who would take things to the next level. Years passed, and the case of D.B. Cooper drifted into the realm of legend. The FBI had officially closed the investigation in 2016 after decades of following dead-end leads. The money found in 1980 remained the only tangible evidence, and with no solid conclusions, Cooper's identity seemed destined to remain one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in American history. But as with many unsolved crimes, the obsession never truly died. While the FBI moved on, a retired commercial airline pilot named Dan Grider couldn't let go of the case. With over 24,000 flight hours under his belt and a deep knowledge of aviation, Grider started his own investigation, determined to unravel the mystery that had captivated the world for decades. Grider wasn't just another armchair detective, he was a man with a purpose. He spent years studying flight logs, terrain maps, weather reports, and FBI files that had been kept under wraps. What he uncovered was startling. By recreating jump scenarios and analyzing parachute models, Grider began to see patterns others had missed. The more he dug, the more convinced he became that the truth was just within reach. Then, in 2023, Grider stumbled upon something that would change everything. He followed a hunch to a dusty storage unit in Utah. The unit had once belonged to a woman with ties to Richard Floyd McCoy Jr., a name that had been floating around the Cooper case for years, but had never been taken seriously. McCoy had been a suspect in the early days of the investigation, but his name had faded from the spotlight. Inside the storage unit, Grider found a parachute. Not just any parachute, but one with distinctive military modifications, a type that matched the one Cooper had requested back in 1971. Grider's pulse quickened. Could this parachute be the key to unlocking the mystery? And why was it in a storage unit connected to McCoy? It was a detail no one had considered. The link between McCoy and Cooper was more than circumstantial. Grider had uncovered the smoking gun. This wasn't just a random lead, it was something that tied 2 unsolved crimes together with eerie precision. And suddenly, McCoy wasn't just a name from the past, he was the frontrunner in the search for D.B. Cooper. But the parachute wasn't the only clue Grider uncovered. As his investigation continued, Grider found even more disturbing connections. McCoy, once thought to be mere copycat of Cooper, now seemed to be a central figure in a case that had baffled law enforcement for over 50 years. Could the FBI
had been wrong all along? Was Richard McCoy the infamous D.B. Cooper after all? As Dan Greider delved deeper into the case, he began to uncover startling similarities between Richard Floyd McCoy Jr. and D.B. Cooper. McCoy, a decorated Vietnam War veteran, was an unlikely suspect. He had the outward appearance of a model citizen, a devout Mormon, a family man, and a law student. But beneath this polished exterior was a man capable of pulling off one of the most daring heists in American history. The FBI had initially dismissed McCoy as a copycat. In 1972, just 5 months after Cooper's hijacking, McCoy executed a nearly identical plan. He boarded United Airlines Flight 855, handed a note to a flight attendant, and demanded $500,000 in cash, 4 parachutes, and a refueled plane. His method was strikingly similar to Cooper's: a calm demeanor, the use of a parachute, and the instruction for the plane to take off after the ransom was delivered. After receiving the money, McCoy jumped from the plane, disappearing into the night just like Cooper. The similarities between the two hijackings were uncanny. Same plane, same tactics, same jump from the rear stairwell. But the key difference? McCoy was captured shortly after the hijacking. The FBI quickly tracked him down, arrested him, and found his fingerprints on an in-flight glass of water. The case against McCoy was clear, and he was sentenced to 45 years in prison. But McCoy's arrest didn't clear up the Cooper mystery, it deepened it. The eerie parallels between McCoy's heist and Cooper's escape raised a significant question. Could McCoy have been Cooper all along? Greider's investigation revealed even more strange connections. Both hijackings were carried out with the same meticulous planning and precision. The same type of Boeing 727 aircraft was used in both crimes. Both hijackers demanded parachutes, and both disappeared without a trace into the night. Was this just a coincidence, or was McCoy using his inside knowledge to replicate Cooper's crime? The FBI, however, dismissed this theory, citing differences in the physical descriptions of Cooper and McCoy. Witnesses described Cooper as a man in his mid-40s with dark hair and an olive complexion, while McCoy was younger, fair-skinned, and had lighter hair. The handwriting on the hijacker's notes also appeared different, and the FBI was quick to emphasize these differences. But Greider wasn't convinced. The more he studied McCoy's background, his military training, his knowledge of parachutes, and his ability to execute such a precise plan, the more he began to suspect that McCoy's differences were intentional. Could McCoy have altered his appearance and handwriting deliberately to mislead the FBI and throw them off the trail? As Dan Greider dug deeper into McCoy's life and the case, he began to find even more curious evidence. Evidence that suggested McCoy might have been more than just a copycat. Could McCoy's family have known more than they let on? And what would the truth about his involvement in the Cooper case mean for the FBI, who had closed the investigation years ago? The pieces were starting to fit together, but they didn't paint the full picture yet. The deeper Dan Greider delved into the mystery, the more he began to sense that the truth about D.B. Cooper wasn't just buried in files or old reports. It was hidden within the McCoy family. After all, Richard Floyd McCoy Jr. had been a decorated war veteran, a loving father, and a man who had lived a life full of honor, at least in the eyes of those who knew him. But his family knew more than they let on. In the years after McCoy's arrest for the 1972 hijacking, his family largely kept quiet about his past. To the outside world, Richard McCoy had been a man who made a grave mistake, an American hero who had gone astray. His family, particularly his wife and children, never spoke openly about the parallels between McCoy's hijacking and that of D.B. Cooper. Why was this? Were they protecting a secret that could ruin everything? Greider, with his relentless curiosity, knew he had to get to the bottom of it. His research led him to try reaching out to McCoy's children, Shantae and Rick McCoy III. Over the years, the McCoy family had remained largely silent on the matter, refusing to entertain the rumors linking Richard McCoy to the Cooper hijacking. But Grider was persistent, sending letters, emails, and messages, hoping to crack through the barrier of silence. As Grider reached out to them, the family's refusal to comment felt less like denial and more like protection.
It wasn't just that they didn't want the public to know the truth. It felt as though they were protecting something deeper, something that could change everything. Grider's hunches began to align. The McCoy family's silence wasn't a simple matter of keeping a secret. They had been carrying a burden, one they likely never asked for, but one they had kept for years. Could the McCoy family have known the truth about their father's role in the D.B. Cooper heist all along? After months of effort, Grider was finally able to arrange a meeting with McCoy's son, Rick. The conversation that followed would turn out to be one of the most pivotal moments in the investigation. Rick McCoy III finally agreed to sit down with Grider. What he would reveal in that quiet conversation would shatter the illusion of silence and change everything Grider thought he knew. Was it possible that after decades of speculation, the McCoy family knew all along who D.B. Cooper really was? And more importantly, was Richard McCoy Jr. truly the elusive hijacker that had baffled the FBI for 50 years? The more Dan Grider pieced together the story of Richard McCoy Jr., the clearer the picture became. McCoy's life had been full of striking parallels to D.B. Cooper. But it wasn't just about the hijackings. There was something deeper at play, something buried in the family's past and in McCoy's military background. Grider knew that the only way to truly get to the bottom of the mystery was to follow every lead, no matter how far-fetched it seemed. The breakthrough came when Grider found a connection that no one had seriously considered before: McCoy's parachuting expertise. Richard McCoy was not just an ordinary hijacker. He was a trained skydiver, someone who knew exactly how to plan a jump under the most difficult conditions. This wasn't just a fluke or a lucky escape. It was a calculated act carried out by someone who understood how to survive in extreme situations. Grider spent months tracing McCoy's past, digging into military records and reviewing parachute models. What he found was astonishing. McCoy's skydiving background made him the perfect candidate to execute the D.B. Cooper hijacking. But it was more than that. McCoy had not only the technical knowledge to plan such a daring escape, but the psychological profile that matched Cooper's calm demeanor during the crime. Both men were cool under pressure, methodical, and confident in their actions, traits that made the Cooper hijacking more than just a random crime. It seemed like McCoy had been uniquely suited for the job. But the most startling discovery came when Grider found a military-style parachute tucked away in a storage unit in Utah. It was the same type of parachute Cooper had requested in 1971, modified with unusual features that made it stand out. This was the same kind of parachute McCoy had used during his own hijacking in 1972. The similarities between the two cases were now undeniable, and the link between McCoy and Cooper was growing stronger with each passing day. What was even more unsettling was that the parachute had been hidden in a storage unit tied to McCoy's family. Grider's heart raced as he examined the rigging. It was not a common parachute. Its unusual modifications matched the ones detailed in the FBI files from 1971. Grider had found the missing piece of the puzzle. The parachute wasn't just an odd relic. It was evidence that could connect McCoy directly to Cooper. As Grider held the parachute in his hands, the weight of the discovery hit him. This wasn't just another lead. This was evidence that could prove that Richard McCoy Jr. wasn't merely a copycat. He was D.B. Cooper. But was this the smoking gun? Or was there more to the story that had yet to be uncovered? The deeper Grider dug, the more he realized that McCoy's story wasn't just about the hijacking. It was about a man who had lived in the shadow of a secret for decades. Dan Grider knew he was holding something monumental. The parachute was the breakthrough the case had been waiting for. This wasn't just any parachute. It was a crucial piece of evidence that connected Richard McCoy to D.B. Cooper in ways no one had ever considered before. When Grider found the parachute, tucked away in a forgotten storage unit, he felt a sense of urgency. He understood its significance right away. The unique military modifications on the parachute were consistent with the FBI's notes on Cooper's parachute request back in 1971. What made this discovery even more compelling was the connection to McCoy. The parachute had been stored in a unit with ties to McCoy's family. Was it a coincidence? Or was this the final clue that would link McCoy directly to the infamous hijacking? Grider wasted no time. He brought the parachute to experts who could confirm its authenticity. The results were staggering. The parachute's design and modifications were an exact match to the one the FBI had documented back in 1971. This wasn't just a random piece of equipment. It was the very same type that D.B. Cooper had used in his daring escape, and it had been carefully hidden for decades, tucked away in a storage unit that had ties to McCoy's family. But the question that lingered was, why had McCoy's family kept the parachute hidden for so long? The answer wasn't immediately clear, but Grider's instincts told him that the McCoy family had known something all along. This discovery was no mere accident. The parachute was a deliberate clue left behind by a man who had orchestrated two nearly identical hijackings. And what made the discovery even chilling was the fact that McCoy's family had kept it from the FBI for years. Could they have been protecting him? Or was there something even more sinister behind their silence? With each new revelation, the mystery deepened, and soon, Grider would have to confront the McCoy family with what he knew and what they had been hiding for decades.
As Dan Grider delved further into the mystery of Richard McCoy Jr. and the D.B. Cooper case, he began to feel a sense of unease. The parachute discovery was a game changer, but it wasn't just about the evidence. It was about what the McCoy family knew, or perhaps more accurately, what they had kept hidden for all these years. McCoy's family had always been tight-lipped about the connection between their father and the Cooper hijacking. To the public, Richard McCoy had been a tragic figure, an American war hero gone astray. But Grider knew that the McCoy family had been living with a burden far heavier than anyone could have imagined. For years, Grider had tried to reach out to McCoy's children, Shantae and Rick McCoy III, in hopes of uncovering the truth. Initially, they had resisted, maintaining their silence on the matter. They had lived under the weight of rumors and whispers for decades, and Grider suspected they were tired of hiding the truth. They weren't just avoiding the media, they were hiding something. They were shielding themselves from a secret that had shaped every aspect of their lives. The more Grider researched, the more he realized that this wasn't simply about uncovering the identity of D.B. Cooper. It was about confronting a family's dark past. What had they known? How long had they known it? And why, after all these years, were they so adamant about staying quiet? After months of persistent effort, Grider finally received a breakthrough. Rick McCoy III, Richard McCoy's son, agreed to meet with him. It wasn't an easy decision for Rick, but something had changed. Perhaps it was the weight of the years of silence, or perhaps it was the undeniable evidence Grider had uncovered. Whatever the reason, Rick McCoy was ready to talk. Their conversation was quiet, emotional, and at times difficult. Grider didn't approach Rick with accusations. He simply laid out the facts: the parachute, the connections, the striking similarities between McCoy's hijacking and Cooper's. And then the bombshell came. Rick McCoy III, with a trembling voice, revealed something Grider had been waiting years to hear. What he said next would confirm everything Grider had suspected, but it also opened a floodgate of deeper questions. Could McCoy's family really have been protecting him all this time? And if they knew the truth, why had they kept it a secret for so long? The moment Rick McCoy III spoke the words, everything Grider had been working toward clicked into place. "We always knew it was him," Rick confessed, his voice trembling with the weight of the revelation. "We never wanted to believe it, but now it's all there. He was Cooper. He had to be." For decades, the mystery of D.B. Cooper had loomed over America like a ghost. The FBI had investigated countless leads, followed countless suspects, and still, they never found the man responsible for the most legendary hijacking in history. But now, in this quiet moment, a son had confirmed what many had speculated. Richard McCoy Jr., the same man who had been arrested for a nearly identical hijacking in 1972, was D.B. Cooper. The truth was finally out. The family who had kept this secret for decades had been shielding a man who had orchestrated one of the most daring and mysterious crimes in American history. Grider's investigation, once a personal obsession, had led him to this pivotal moment, a moment that would end the legend of D.B. Cooper and replace it with a name: Richard Floyd McCoy Jr. But as Grider listened to Rick's confession, there was something even more profound at play. McCoy's family had lived in the shadow of this secret for years, and now that it was finally out in the open, the weight of the truth was too much to bear. The McCoy family's silence had been a form of protection for Richard, and perhaps protection for themselves. The revelation wasn't just a breakthrough in the case, it was a deeply emotional unraveling of a family's hidden truth. The FBI had always dismissed McCoy as a copycat, pointing to the differences in physical descriptions and handwriting. But the more Grider reflected on the details, the more he realized that these differences were likely intentional acts of misdirection. McCoy, a trained military man, had the skills to alter his appearance and handwriting to deceive the FBI. He knew exactly how to cover his tracks, and in doing so, he managed to slip through the cracks of the investigation. As Grider stood there, processing everything Rick had just revealed, he couldn't help but wonder, what else was McCoy hiding? What had driven a decorated war hero, a family man, to commit such a bold and dangerous act? And if McCoy was Cooper, what other secrets did he leave behind, buried in the past?